Alrighty, so now that you know what a significant figure is and how they're used in measurements and things like that, we need to determine how to count significant figures. And this is a skill that you got to get good at, and it'll become pretty routine for you. And you'll see why it's important here in just a bit. So we're gonna look at a number and determine how many significant figures are there. So the thing to remember about numbers is that they either have or do not have a decimal place. Okay, and so typically measurements will have decimal places and counted numbers will not, but that's not always true as it turns out, but typically that's the way it goes. So let's look at a couple of examples here. Here are two different numbers, 350 and 3.50. So 350 does not have a decimal place, right? And 3.50 does have a decimal place. So identifying which numbers have decimals versus which ones don't, that is not the hard part of this. I wish it was that easy the whole time. But for a geography lesson, we'll start with looking at the USA, baby, USA. So let's say that this is our country of the United States of America. There's Idaho, like right there. No, this is all just, I don't even know what over here. This is all just like weird little states. Texas. Anyway, not that it matters, but these do. On the west coast of the United States, we have the Pacific Ocean, and on the east coast we have the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, and then the things that are important about this is the letter P and the letter A. Okay, keep those in mind. So P means present. Okay, so P for present, P for Pacific, A for Atlantic, A for absent. Okay, and what we're talking about with present and absent is numbers that either have a decimal place present or have a decimal place absent. Okay, and so here's some examples. We have 3.50, 0.00121, 1.84 times 10 to the sixth. Those all have a decimal place. And you can see that these numbers over here do not have a decimal place. Okay, does that make sense? So what does any of that have to do with any of this? Now, here's the rules. If you're looking at a number where there is a decimal place present, there is a decimal in the number, you have to begin counting at the Pacific side of the number. And so when I say Pacific side of the number, I just mean the left-hand side of the number, okay? So like in a number like, well, here's the example we're gonna work. So the Pacific side is over here and the Atlantic side is over here, right? So that just, with a decimal in the number, you focus your attention on the Pacific side of the number, okay? And what you do is you begin counting at the first number that is not a zero, okay? And then once you've started counting, you don't stop counting. You count every other number after that, okay? So as we go along here, we're gonna start at the Pacific side. We're gonna go through the numbers that are zeros first, so we don't count them. And we start counting right here at that 2, okay? So the 2, the 1, the 0, and the 5, those are the significant figures. So this number, even though you see 6 numbers here, only 4 of them are significant. So this number has 4 sig figs, okay? Sometimes your decimal number with a decimal doesn't start with 0. So like if we had, I don't know, like 35.247, you'd follow the same rules. You start at the Pacific side because there's a decimal place present, and you just start counting at the first number that's not a 0, and then you just count everything beyond it too. So this one, the first number that's not a 0 is the 3, and you count all the way through the number, and this is 5 sig figs. Makes sense. Even if there's a zero in the number, as long as it's beyond the initial zeros, you do count it. Like so not all zeros are insignificant, just the ones that are at the front. Okay. Now the other one is if you have a decimal place that is not present. So we have an absent decimal place. You do the same process, you just begin at the Atlantic side of the number. And so here, this is our example number, this again is the Pacific and this is the Atlantic side. So since there is a decimal place absent, we're gonna start counting from the Atlantic side of the number. And you follow the same rules. You slide down the number until you get to a number that's not a zero, which in this case is the 5. And then once you start counting, you don't stop. Okay, so this 0 here is a non-significant number. So this has a total of 4 sig figs. Okay, let's do another one just for giggles here. How about? I should be able to think of a number, I suppose. How about we do something with some zeros in the middle? So how about if we do 840,200. 200, there we go. So here's a number without a decimal place. We're starting at the Atlantic side because decimal is absent, and we start counting at the first non-zero number, and we count all the way through. This also has 4 sig figs. So even though that's a zero, it's a significant zero. Only the ones at the end of the number are insignificant. Okay. Oh, and then one more thing I wanted to show you here. This is a good example here, and this always comes up as a question. When you're dealing with a number that's in scientific notation, only the numbers here before the times 10 to the whatever, only these numbers are significant. And it's the same thing. You start from the Pacific side and start at the first number that's not a zero, which is the 1. You count them through, and that's 3 sig figs. Okay. So yeah, don't really mind the times 10 to the 6th when you are counting sig figs in a number like this. And in the next video, we're going to show you why this stuff really matters. Okay. Hope that helps.